This is the Yapster TM-YB100A headset. It's mainly intended for voice over IP on a computer with analog mic and line inputs, but it can be hacked to work with a cell phone. The sound quality you currently hear is not what the listener hears on a cell phone, especially T-Mobile. This is going through an extremely high quality, homemade preamp with all discrete transistors. The problem with at least my cell phone is there's no way to hear yourself. I hacked a self-monitoring breakout board with some LM324 op amps, but it's very sensitive to RF if you're on a GSM network. You have to keep the phone away from the microphone. There may still be a way to reduce the RF noise with some bigger choke inductors, but this board was made entirely with spare parts. There is a blast filter of sorts on the microphone, but it's not very effective. The microphone is too loose to hold its position if you move your head too much. This one is actually taped down, but sometimes all you care about is cost and sound quality, not whether it's a piece of junk. For $15 and some duct tape, it gets the job done. Also, as you probably noticed, it's very hard to drink water with this headset on. Now some reading material to give you an idea what the electret microphone on the Yapster TM-YB100A sounds like. Mattie Beal, the girl who won the land lottery. A retelling by Andrea Hartzog. Not too long ago, only boys were supposed to be brave. Only boys were supposed to have adventures, not girls. Oh no! But a young girl with a brave heart dared to be different. She risked everything she had to help build a new town in the Indian nations. Her name was Mattie Beal. She lived in Wichita, Kansas. Mattie worked as a telephone operator. One day, Mattie went to see her friend Florence. Florence was a dressmaker. She was making a dress for Mattie, and Mattie had to try it on. Florence fitted the dress. The two girls talked to Mattie's mother about the land lottery. Anyone who entered had a chance to win some land. "Let's go down and register," Mattie said. "Let's do it today." "Both of us," Florence said firmly. Wherever Mattie led, Florence was willing to follow. "Why, Mattie Beal, I won't hear a word of it," Mattie's mother said. "It's too dangerous for two young girls." The girls did not care if it was dangerous. They wanted to register for the lottery, so they put on their prettiest starched dresses. They laced up their high-button shoes and topped their long braids with hats. They went to catch a train leaving Wichita for El Reno. This was where people could register for the lottery. The two girls tried and tried to get on the train, but there was no place for them to sit. Men, women, and children were sitting any place they could. Then Mattie and Florence saw a newspaper reporter they knew. He was going to El Reno to work. The reporter found Mattie and Florence a seat on the crowded train. Nothing very harmful happened. Nobody stole their money or their bags. Nobody tried to kidnap them. Their friends warned Mattie and Florence that hotels in El Reno were dangerous for single women. They would be lucky to even find a room, but the newspaper reporter had friends living in El Reno. He was able to get Mattie and Florence a room with his friends. The room had 6 cots in it. Mattie and Florence had to pay $2 each to sleep on these cots. The next morning, the man of the house helped Mattie and Florence register. The two ladies stood in line for hours. They finally signed their names on a piece of paper in the land office. The ladies were told that the drawing would be held August 6, 1901, in the El Reno schoolyard. Then Mattie and Florence went home to Wichita, Kansas. They went back to work and waited to see if their names would be drawn. The ladies were wanted very much to win, but with so many names entered, they had very little chance. The day of the drawing was very, very hot. A crowd of over 100,000 people gathered in the El Reno schoolyard around a platform about 5 feet high. The platform was covered with canvas for protection against the sun or rain. There were 2 boxes on the platform. The boxes held the numbers of all the people who had registered at El Reno and at Lawton. The winning numbers were drawn from the boxes by 10 young boys. The boys were blindfolded and turned around several times before putting their hands in one of the boxes to draw out a number. The land office workers tried very hard to make sure that everyone who had registered had the same chance of winning. Postcards were mailed to people whose numbers had been drawn. After the person received the postcard, he or she could file on the claim. One afternoon, Mattie Beal was walking down the street in her hometown. All of a sudden, a total stranger took a picture of her. Mattie wanted to know why the man took her picture. "You placed second in a land lottery that included 164,516 names," he exclaimed. Mattie was thrilled. She was even more excited when she heard Florence Allen had also won. The two girls packed and started down to Lawton to file for their land. Mattie's brother Frank, who worked for the railroad, went with them. They arrived in Marlow by train on August 4th, 1901. A man with a spring wagon drove them over the hills to Lawton, about 20 miles away. When Mattie, Florence, and Frank arrived in Lawton, there were thousands of tents spread out on the plains. The first day, they found a tent to rent and bought cots to sleep on. Everything seemed peaceful that first night. Mattie was sound asleep until she heard a loud noise. Suddenly, a horse sat down on her face. He had been scratching himself against the tent pole. The pole broke. For a second, the horse leaned on Mattie's face. Mattie was a little scared, but she tied up the horse away from the tent. Then she went back to sleep. The next morning, Mattie went with her brother to file for a piece of land. She planned to choose the land close to the town site. She knew this land would be worth more money, but Mattie had to wait her turn. James R. Wood had drawn the first claim. Mattie had drawn the second claim. Mr. Wood pulled a trick on Mattie. He filed a claim on land that lay in one long strip along the south side of the town site. Everyone thought Mr. Woods would choose his land the way most people did, in the shape of a square. But Mr. Woods' claim was in the shape of an L, and his land was right next to the city limits. People would want to live close to town. They would buy his land and build their homes on it. These people would not have far to go to get to town, so his land would be worth more. There was no law that said Mr. Woods had done anything wrong. Now Mattie had to file her claim further away from the town site, but many people were very angry about such unfair treatment of a lady. They took to calling Mr. Woods Hogwoods. But Mattie made a better choice than Hogwoods. The land she chose was worth more than Hogwoods' land. Her claim was on higher ground. Hogwoods' land was in the lower Squaw Creek bottom. His land flooded every time it rained. Mattie's land stayed high and dry. After Mattie had filed her claim, she and her brother bought lumber and built a house. They invited people over on Sunday afternoons for lemonade and cookies. Mattie made everyone feel at home. Everyone liked this young lady. Many men wanted to marry Mattie because she was rich now. She received over 500 marriage proposals. For a long time, Mattie wasn't interested in marriage. Then she met Charles Payne. He was a lumber salesman. Mattie and Charles fell in love. Later that year, the two were married. They built a large, beautiful home on the corner of 4th and Summit Streets, where they reared their 3 lovely daughters, Lahoma, Martha Helen, and Louisa. Mattie Beal, the young girl who was daring and lucky, lived happily in Lawton for many years. She died in 1931. Mattie donated some of her land to the city. She asked the city to build a school, a church, and a public park. Mattie's family sold the home in 1939. In 1973, the Lawton Heritage Association was formed. People wanted to save Mattie Beal's home. After years of work, the old home was opened to the public in 1980. Mattie Beal Mansion was the first landmark in Lawton to be placed on the National Register of Historic Places.